Welcome to this webinar on Neo-Humanism, Liberate Your Mind. And I am Dada Ranjitananda. Today's presentation will be in two parts. The first one is the presentation itself, and it will take about half an hour. And then there will be time for questions and answers. You can use the chat window for your questions. So let's go to the presentation. Neo-Humanism. We are talking about something in the mind. And the mind is always moving, all the time. So there is a constant psychic movement. There are different ways of psychic movement. The first that I will mention here is sentiment. You like something, and then you go after it. You allow your mind to run after that thing, that object, or whatever that you like. That's sentiment. Just like it, run after it. There is a second way of psychic movement, and that is when you use discrimination. Use your conscience. Before doing something, you think, should I do this or not? Is it proper? Is it not proper? After consideration, then you decide your course of action, then you do it. That's another way of psychic movement. And the third way, instinct. Instinct is more related to undeveloped creatures. There is an inborn instinct, and following that instinct, they act. For example, a mosquito. A mosquito lands on your body and starts sucking the blood. That's pure instinct. It's not sentiment, it's just instinct. This is a third way of psychic movement. So we have seen three ways of psychic movement. I put in this order now. The first is discrimination or conscience. The second is sentiment, in contrast with rationality, just sentiment. And the third is instinct. Now, according to how developed a being is, you follow more the number one. If a being is less developed, it will follow more the number three. So according to the development of that being, for example, human beings, we should use more the number one. In fact, we should always use the number one. We should do something after we discriminate, after we think, after we decide if that is a proper thing to do or not. If we can do that, so many problems will be avoided. You know, we see, for example, just a few days ago, I saw a politician in the US. He was even considered to be a president, to be a candidate for president. But what he did, he just utilized money from his campaign to buy some luxury goods, material objects. Now that came up and he is condemned. He has to serve some time in jail, and his career is finished. If he had thought a little bit more before doing that action, if he had used his conscience before doing that action, that situation could have been avoided. So psychic movement is very important. It's happening all the time. Now we have to control it. And that is part of Neo-Humanism, how to control our psychic movement. If we do not use discrimination, if we go for the sentiments, because human beings, we are more psychic than physical. Everything is in our mind. So the sentiments can influence us very much. So if we just like something, we don't use our discrimination, we are following a very risky path. And there are different types of sentiment. If we allow our mind to flow towards a territory, for example, I love my land and I will do everything to develop my land. That is what we call a geo-sentiment. It's a sentiment when the mind flows towards a geographical area, a territory. And many theories in the world have been created based on this geo-sentiment. Sometimes is a geo-religious sentiment. So some people will say that if they will take a bath at a certain time in a certain place, they will be free from all their sins, or their mind will be free. Okay, now what happens? Everybody wants to take their bath in that same place at the same time. So that can create problems, conflicts. And it could be also a geo-economic. Geo-economic. I do everything for my, let's say, town or my state, and I do not develop the other ones. So it's a geo-economic, geopolitical. I'm a politician and I say I will do everything for our town, for our neighborhood. So all these are geo-sentiments. So what is geo-sentiment? When our love is limited to a geographical location. So as you can see, it's a very small, limited sentiment, this geo-sentiment. As I mentioned, it could be a geo-economic sentiment. For example, some industries are located in a developed country. The raw material is coming from an undeveloped country. So now they transport this raw material to the rich country. There it is transformed into the finished product. Now that finished product can be again sold to that country where the raw material came from. The difference, raw material has a certain price, finished product has another price. So it happened that these industrially developed countries have exploited the undeveloped countries. So they resorted to imperialism or economic fascism to maintain their wealth at the expense of the undeveloped countries. So this is an example of a geo-economic sentiment. I also mention geo-religious. For example, a river is sacred. So if you go to that river, drink the water of that river, take a bath in that river, or you will attain a liberation, or you will be purified. But maybe that sacred river is a very polluted river. So what is really happening is that you are getting so many bacteria and you may even get sick, badly sick. So there is no logic in that. And why that particular river is sacred? The supreme consciousness is infinite. It's everywhere. Why it is only in that river? Or another example of geo-religious sentiment. You have to go to a certain place of pilgrimage at least once in your lifetime. Otherwise, your life will not be fruitful. That is a geo-religious sentiment. Does not make sense because every religion says God is everywhere. And now, why you have to go to a particular place to be close to God if God is everywhere? This is a geo-religious sentiment. We should be careful with geo-religious sentiments. In fact, geo-sentiment is a threat to the inner asset of humanity. What is that inner asset of humanity? Love. Love without boundaries. But geo-sentiment puts a boundary in your love. It limits your love. So geo-sentiment is a threat to humanity as a whole. So what is this sentiment? Geo-sentiment. Geo comes from geographical location. Where, in which place this sentiment happens? It happens where people do not follow the path of rationality. People are guided by dogmas, by ideas that make no sense. There, geo-sentiment can flourish. And it's a very cheap sentiment. It should be eliminated, this geo-sentiment. It could be a geo-socialism, geopolitics, national socialism. All these confine people in a location, separate people from other people. And what's the result? Violence, wars, conflicts. How to overcome geo-sentiment? There are two steps or 2 points, two things we can do. One is develop rationalistic mentality. And number two, study. If you study, if you know more, limited ideas will have more difficulty to enter your mind because your mind will be more expanded and these limited ideas will be not accepted. So it's very important that we study, that we increase our knowledge, and that we understand things more rationally. If something doesn't make sense, we don't need to accept it just because somebody else is telling. Many religions are based on geo-sentiment. But if we think rationally, we can overcome them. All right, that much for geo-sentiment. Now we are going to pass to another sentiment. This sentiment is called social-sentiment. Social is related to group. This sentiment is related to a group and not to a geographical location. And you can see that this sentiment can be more expanded than geo-sentiment. Means that group could be in different geographical locations, and that sentiment can embrace that whole group. So we can think, yes, social sentiment then is a better sentiment than geo-sentiment. But the thing is that this is also a limited sentiment, and we will see that it can cause even more problem than geo-sentiment. Now, this social sentiment, which is a group sentiment, it um, can be small, means in a small group, or it can be a bigger group. For example, my family, I only love my family, I do everything for my family. That's a social sentiment, but it's small. But now I expand it, not only my family, my caste, all the Brahmins, for example. It's a larger sentiment, include more people. I can even think, no, my whole community. And I do everything for my whole community at the expense of other communities. Or I can even enlarge it to national sentiment and even more expanded international sentiment. And we can think that, oh, this international sentiment, that's good. Well, the thing is that international is still you are thinking of different nations, so you are still separating into nations. It may be a more expanded sentiment, but it might even create more problem. Okay. This social sentiment can also be social religious, means I do everything for my religious group. It could be social economic. I do things that will benefit my group. Could be social political. My group dominates the political scene. It is all based on selfish interest. It might be more expanded than geo-sentiment, but it can create more problem than geo-sentiment. So social sentiment is the sentiment related to group. Could be a social group, economic group, a political group, but it's all based on interest. Social sentiment can expand. Imagine if social sentiment expands, and reach its maximum. The maximum is maybe I'm a human being, so my sentiment includes all human beings, humanism. So that is when social sentiment, which was small, goes on expanding, includes all humans. Now we can say, yeah, oh, okay, that's good. Well, does humanism provide all the answers? Because you see, there are other beings also, not only humans. The way we run things, we take humans into consideration, everything for the humans, but there are many other beings. And what happens? It can create a clash, a conflict between different creatures. So that is inter-creature. Inter-creature between one creature and another, between human beings and animals, between human beings and plants. Now, because we consider human beings higher than plants or higher than animals, so it's okay to sacrifice the animals for the benefit of the human being. That's a clash between different creatures. Now, That same mentality, means thinking that something is more important, could also create an intra-creature conflict amongst human beings. Means we can say, oh, those human beings, they are not so important as these human beings. And we can see that in the world, you know. And that is an intra-creature clash. And humanism doesn't avoid it. Some examples of intra-human conflict. Sometimes there is some humanitarian actions, and like the US is donating a lot of rice to Haiti, either donating or giving at a very low price. Oh, that's great. That's really humanitarian. But now what's happening with the local production? Local production finished because they cannot compete. Who will buy them for a higher price than they can get the so-called humanitarian rice? So how other ways this intra-human conflict happens? Some ideas are injected in the minds of other people. Like we can say that their religion is primitive, our religion is better, so they should adopt our religion. And their medicine man or their shaman is, is, let's say, inspired by the devil, so we should ignore it. So that destroys the basis of that culture, the originality of that culture. And others, should a reformist strategy means we say, well, yeah, we are going to change and never change? Or should a humanistic strategy means we say something as if it's in the name of humanism, but actually is for economic interest or some other interest? So social sentiment can go from minimitis to maximitis, means the smallest to the biggest. And the difference is only in the radius. One includes less people, the other includes more people. Now, the point is that they are based on the same psychology, either the small one or the big one. And we can even say that both are kind of a mental disease. You know, it's a mental disease that you exclude others and that you justify that you can do something to others that you will not do to those that you feel connected to. And that is social sentiment. It's a very dangerous sentiment. And even people with good intentions, even spiritualists, they may suffer from this social sentiment. And they will be blinded by the social sentiment, and they can act in such a ways that do not make sense, that rationally do not make sense. And that's about social sentiment. Now we need also to overcome this social sentiment. How to do it? Here also we have 2 points. One, we need to develop what is called a proto-spiritualistic mentality. What is a spiritualistic mentality? A spiritualistic mentality would be that we are all connected. We are all coming from that same infinite cosmic consciousness, cosmic entity. So we are all connected, as if we are all children of the same progenitor. And the other is a principle of social equality, which is basically the same thing, is that we all love our life Each one loves his or her life. We are all human beings. We are all important. If we can develop this kind of mentality of social equality, connected or added and add a spiritualistic approach. We say proto because it's like not really established in the spirituality, but having that mentality, at least thinking in that way. If we do this, we could overcome social sentiment. It is not easy to overcome social sentiment. Even sometimes we think, oh, I don't have social sentiment. Well, it may happen that in the moment when everything is going okay, you don't have that sentiment. But when things become difficult, stressy, situations become critical, and conflicts arise, then we discover that, oh, there is some social sentiment in me. So it takes a lot of effort to overcome social sentiment, more than it takes to overcome geo-sentiment. This principle of social equality, as an example, imagine a group of people go on a pilgrimage, and on the way, some get hurt or cannot walk. What happens? The others will think how we can carry him or her, how we'll reach everybody together, how we'll continue our march. We do not leave them behind, just leave them there and forget about them. That's not the idea. So that is an example of people who have adopted this principle of social equality. So it's this collective march of all in unison. That's the principle of social equality. A characteristic of neo-humanism, because humanism we saw doesn't embrace all beings. Now when we come to neo-humanism, it embraces all beings, so it's more expanded than humanism. It doesn't create barriers amongst different beings, different individuals. It creates a balance between physical existence, psychic existence, and it brings the mind to the threshold of spirituality. Because neo-humanism is expanding the mind, is when your love is growing to include everything and everyone. That expansion brings us close to spirituality, because spirituality is when the mind is moving towards the infinite. So the mind is expanding, 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 removing all barriers. So new humanism is a must for somebody who is following a true spiritual path. You know, if in that spiritual practice there is discrimination between people, that's not the neo-humanism. Then that practice is defective. Because eventually, if somebody is expanding the mind, one has to become a new humanist to really connect or to really attain a spiritual elevation. So neo-humanism is an expansion of humanism And this humanism becomes universal. Universalism includes everything in the universe. We really feel connected to the universe. There is no exclusion. We are not anymore on a geo-sentiment that we're only thinking about the earth. You know, if we think only about the earth, that's geo-sentiment also. It may be a very expanded geo-sentiment, but still geo-sentiment. So neo-humanism is universal, includes the whole universe. What are the obstacles to neo-humanism? Selfishness is a great obstacle. Like social sentiment is based on selfishness. And dogmas. Dogmas or isms, nationalism, various isms. What is a dogma? A dogma is a limited idea, an idea that, let's say, confines the mind. It's something that doesn't really make sense, but people accept. Why do they accept? Sometimes for fear. Sometimes it's a religious thing. You know, you in religions, they say, no, you shouldn't think rationally, you just have to accept it. So that creates a problem to the mind. If the mind has to accept something that doesn't make sense to that mind. And that's why we see very intelligent people, scientists, doctors, engineers, and they accept certain dogmas that make no sense in the religious field, even in the economic field. You know, the whole economy today, capitalism. Why some people can accumulate so much that they don't even need? Why is it allowed? Oh, freedom. Oh, that's basically a dogma. You know, in the physical world, where things are limited, one cannot accumulate unlimited. There should be some limitation in the physical world. Maybe in the psychic world, in the mental world, one can accumulate a lot because you can know a lot and still you not take it from somebody else. But if you accumulate a lot of physical wealth, it means you are taking from somebody else. Anyway, so the obstacles to neo-humanism, dogmas and selfishness. Dogma, in fact, is a big problem, and it's responsible for the greatest bloodbaths in history of humanity. Now, how to get established in new humanism? We have to expand our love to all directions. We cannot exclude anything. If we exclude something, it means we are creating a limitation. So what should be the source of inspiration for new humanism? It needs to be spirituality, because only spirituality embraces everything. Only spirituality includes everything. Only spirituality is something related to the infinite. So the source of inspiration for new humanism must be spirituality, but real spirituality, not a dogmatic religiosity. And we come to the end of the presentation. I will do a summary here, what we talked about. We started talking about psychic movement, and we saw that there are three types of psychic movement. We talked about sentiment, is when you just like something and you go for it, no thinking. Animals, you see a dog, you show food, it runs for the food, or a bird will be flying, it will see some food on the ground, it will go to eat the food and it gets caught in the net. It's just sentiment. It's not thinking, what is that food doing there? No, the bird is not thinking that. It's just sentiment. Discrimination. Discrimination is the way humans should do. We should think, is it proper to do this? Is it not proper? Is it going to bring the welfare or not? And the third one is instinct. Instinct is very basic. It's mostly undeveloped beings, undeveloped creatures. They follow instinct. Plants, they move toward the light if they need light, or they avoid the light if they are shade plants. That's just instinct. And then we thought that we mentioned that sentiment can be a big problem if we follow sentiment. And there are different kinds of sentiment in the society which affects everyone. One is geo-sentiment and another is social sentiment. Geo-sentiment can be geo-religious, geo-economic, geopolitical, and the same social sentiment could be social-religious, socio-economic, and social-political. To overcome geo-sentiment, we need to study, get more knowledge, and develop rationality. And to overcome social sentiment, it's very important to follow this principle of social equality. Now, when social sentiment expands to the maximum, it becomes humanism. But humanism is still not the solution. First, it's still kind of based on selfishness when we humans think for our welfare. So we have to go beyond this selfishness. We have to go to Neo-Humanism. Now, Neo-Humanism, we have to understand that we are connected to every being, you know. In fact, the mind, the mind is moving from one being to another. Let's say from one type of body to another type of body. That's the when the mind evolves. First, the mind is very primitive, so it may just need an unicellular body. Now the mind develops, so that unicellular body dies, and that mind moves to a multicellular body, which could be a plant. Now that mind evolves, and that plant body is not enough for that mind, so that mind will leave that body, the body dies, and the mind moves to another body, maybe a body of an animal, so that mind is developing, and that mind may move to a body of a human. Now, as you see, all these beings are connected. Um, they are, we are part of that same, let's say, infinite cosmic entity. It's not that we are completely independent, we are islands. No, every being is connected. So, in that way, we should help every being to develop because we are helping these minds to develop, to move ahead. We should think of all the animate and inanimate beings, how they can develop. And that's New Humanism. And this New Humanism can change the economics, the religion, the politics. So it's very important that we become new humanists. And sometimes we think, oh, I'm a new humanist because I like everybody, I include everybody, I love everybody. Yeah, sometimes intellectually it can be, but when we'll be under pressure, different sentiments will come up. So new humanism comes when we really develop our spiritual part. So it needs some spiritual practice to become a new humanist. All right, so that's the summary. And now I would like to give you time for questions. And please type your questions on the chat window and I will reply. And thank you for attending this webinar. The recording will be available. I didn't include the questions and answers, but the whole presentation is in this recording. Thank you.